What's going on, coders? Welcome to the very first video in this channel and in this new series about competitive programming. So in this series we're going to be approaching different competitive programming questions online, and we'll try to solve them and analyze them and all those stuffs, so that we can get familiar with the concepts of competitive programming and know how we can approach them. So competitive programming can be divided into four approaches. So we can have approach to competitive programming. Just increase this. So first approach will be analyze, second will be code, third will be tests, and the fourth will be your output. So I'm just going to talk small on each of these approaches and we'll get to the coding aspect of this. So analyzing is basically looking at the question that has been given to you and checking or trying to understand the approach in which you'll be able to analyze this question and understand how you are going to solve it. Then coding is after you have analyzed it and you've understood the question, you will now write code, then you test the code, and your output is basically putting whatever the result of the code is to be in the right order, because there is a basic order, or there is an order for outputs of a specific order in which outputs are given or printed out in competitive programming. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So here is a question on competitive programming. Now to analyze, we're going to look at this question and analyze it. It said Arrow Boy wants to organize a party with his friends. Help him choose which ones to invite, which to exclude, in order to make the party as beautiful as possible. Details: Arrow Boy has n friends. So you see that we have some letters in bold. So you just know that you should pay close attention to these letters as they are important. So Arrow Boy has n friends, each of whom has a AI friendship rating that indicates how much Arrow Boy appreciates his presence. Obviously, there are also some unpleasant ones in the list, which therefore has a negative degree of friendship. The beauty of the party is defined as the sum of the degree of friendship of guests. How much can the sum be worth at most? So basically what we're trying to find here is the maximum sum of guests, or based on the friendship rating, or let's say the maximum beauty of the party based on the friendship rating. So let's go more into the input data. We'll have the first line of the input file contains an integer t, the number of test case, followed by t cases numbered from 1 to t. So basically what t is, this first line here is telling us the number of test cases. The test cases like what we are to work on, the values in which we are to work on and test our program on. So they said the first line of the input file contains an integer t, which is here 2, the number of test cases, followed by t test cases numbered from 1 to t. Therefore we know that we're going to be expecting 2 test cases, which is 1 and 2. So then going to the next line, in each test case the first line contains the only integer n, which is 8 and 3. So the second line contains the n integers AI. Therefore, what we know that n from here is his maximum number of friends. So therefore, this 8 here should tell us the number of friends our boy has for this test case, which is 8. So we should expect 8 values here, and if we count it, this is 8. And the second line contains the n integer separated by spaces ai, and we know that ai from here is the friendship rating. So therefore, all these values here are the friendship rating, and we know that we're trying to find the maximum beauty or maximum beauty of the party, and which will be equal to the sum of degree of friendship. So we know that maximum beauty of party is equal to the sum of the degree of friendship. And we also know from this question that some friends are unpleasant and their degree of friendship is negative. And if we're going to find the sum of the degree of friendship, we know that including negative degrees of friendship would reduce the sum of the degree of friendship. So therefore, we're going to try and remove all negative, all friends with negative degree of friendship. So we're going to remove all friends with degree of friendship. And we know we have to find a way of looping through all test cases. So before we do any of this, we're going to loop through all test cases. And when we loop through each test case, which are we know we have 2 test cases, so we'll loop through the first test case and the second one. And when we loop through the first test case, we also want to include this in some sort of list form. So in that list format, we can now perform addition or whatever we want to perform here. So let's go to the code. So here I have what I like to call the skeleton of my program here, which is basically a method of, or an optimized method of accepting input into my program, which I will discuss later in another video. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and solve. So first, we're going to try and loop through the number of test cases. So we know that whatever appears first in the file is going to be the number of test cases according to what we have here. According to the instruction we're given here, we know that the first line of the input file contains an integer t, the number of test cases. So therefore, our first input must always be the number of test cases. By the way, I already downloaded some files here which have the values that are required for this party. So that is what we're working with. So I already included them in my input file. So I have 3 files here, which is basically the party or the Python file, the inputs, and the output file. So basically we already have the input here. I've included some inputs here. So we know that our first input is going to be the number of test cases. So we're going to loop through it. So the best way to do this is use this as our range, since we know that if we're looping through a range, we're going to go from the first value to that particular range, and we know that the number of test cases here is equal to this. So for each value or for each number in the loop, we're going to approach that that test case that aligns with that number. Hope that makes sense. So we're gonna have for test case in in integer of input. So I'm going to change this to integer because of everything in the text file as strings. So we're going to change it to integers. So now what we're basically doing here is getting the first inputs here from this. We've already set our input file to be this file here. This is where we did it. So now we're going to loop through. Now for each test case, we want to get the value or the number of friends in that, which is basically the first number, or the first number in the first line of each test case, which is this. So we're going to go number of friends is equal to integer of input as well. So since we have already written the input here first, this will be taken as our first input here, and our second input here, we are writing input again. This will be taken as our second input. So I'll explain how inputs are collected further in another video, but for now I'm just going to give explanations where I think I should explain. So now, since we have gotten the number of friends here, what we're going to do is put all these friends in all this degree of friendship in a list. So what we're going to do now is we're going to loop through. We're going to use list comprehension in Python. So what we're going to do is degree of friendship to be equal to int degree of friendship. We just use DOF here. DOF for DOF in input integer of since we're already changing to integer here, there's no other need to change it to integer again. So we just go for input dot split, that is splitting it by the spaces. Each of them are separated by spaces. We need to split it up and put it inside this array, inside this list, any of them. So now after we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and find out which of these values are negative, so we will not add them up. Now we want to sum up each degree of friendship. So we're going to try, in order to get the maximum degree of friendship, we are going to sum up only positive integers and not negative integers. So what we're going to do is loop through this array. But first, let's print our result so far and see what we have. So I'll run this here. Okay, I think we have an error somewhere. For test case in integer, I guess I'm making a mistake somewhere. Okay, yeah, there is a mistake. It's meant to be range. That's meant to be a range. So we're meant to add range there. So it's good to test when you reach a considerable point. You should try test. So now here in this our test point, we see that we are getting we're getting the degrees of friendship in an array here. So what we're going to do now is loop through this array. So loop through the array. Let's know array So we're going to look through the array. So what we're going to do is for I in degree of friendship, what we're going to now do is check if it's positive or negative. So we're going to use an if statement. If we know that a value is going to be negative if it's less than 0, it's going to be negative. So we're going to go for all values that are greater than 0. So basically what we're going to have here is dig first for degree in degree of friendship. So if degree is greater than 0, what we want to do is first let's create a sum here, which will indicate the sum of each positive degree. So now to get the sum, we're going to do sum plus equal to the degree. So therefore we're going to add up the degree to this sum for each positive integer in our list. So now when we do this, let's print the sum and see what we got and make sure we are correct. So what we're having for the first one is 11. So we can check this by adding up the first value, which is 3 plus 6, which is 9, 9 plus 1, 10 plus 1, 11. We see that we are correct. So after we have printed this sum, what we will need to do, we'll go back to our file. We'll go back to our question, our instruction, and find out how our output data is to be. So this is how our output data is to be in this format. So to get our output data to be in that format, what we're going to do is we're going to assign a variable result to contain our output. So we're going to have case, then, and we're now going to have this as well. So I'm going to format it. We know that each case, since we're going to be recording the test case here, what we're going to know is that this is going to loop through each test case, and for each test case it's going to solve this, then go to the next test case. So therefore this will give us the index of that particular test case. So we're going to add test case here, but since indexing in Python is starts from 0, we're going to increment it by 1, since we want it to start from 1. Then we will include our sum as well. Then what we're going to do now is print our result. And when we print this, we see that we're getting what we require. So we're saying for case 1 the number is 11. This is the maximum degree or maximum beauty for the party that we can obtain. So then this is a good program, at least from the data we've run. But also one thing about competitive programming is writing code that is able to run a large amount of data in the minimum or in the smallest amount of time. So now we're going to test this against a large amount of data. I think I have one here, which should be around here. So this is a fairly large amount of data, though it's just 10 test cases. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to run this here. Just all we're going to do is just paste it here and save. Don't forget to save and run. So this doesn't take a large amount of time, it just takes less than a second or so to run. So therefore this is a good program. So one thing you should consider when you're writing a program for competitive programming, you should make sure you write the best code possible, or you try to write the best code possible so that you won't waste a lot of time. So your code won't waste a lot of time on big data. So you try your best to minimize your code and use the best approach possible. Try to be updated as possible, or as possible as you can, as recent be as recent as you can, so that you know all the latest updates and easier ways to tackle problems. So I think that would be it for this video. I would leave the link to this problem in the description box below, so you could try it out yourself, and you could also refer to this video if you're getting stuck somewhere and maybe you find yourself. So that is it for this video. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.